In this video, I'm going to reveal to you the best way to incorporate stories into any sales presentation, because ultimately stories sell, and the better that you're able to tell your personal story or just tell a story in general, the more sales that you're going to make. Hey, I'm Tom Jackobs. This channel is specifically for solopreneurs and solo practitioners who want to increase their business with the power of presentation that turns into performances that ultimately bring profits to their business. So let's dive into one of my favorite topics, and that's public speaking. I've run personal training studios, I've done consulting work, I've sold stuff online, and every job that I've had, whether that's in a corporate or entrepreneurial way, the best way to communicate with tons of people and to sell your program, your thoughts, your ideas is through public speaking. The problem is that so many people are afraid of public speaking. There's a huge fear of speaking in public, which is relevant, but with more practice, anybody can do public speaking very easily. And in your sales presentations, whether it's to one-on-one or it's in a group setting where you're doing public speaking, using stories sells really, really well. Now, there is a good way of selling with story, and then there's the bad way of selling with story. And I want to share with you a very simple structure that you can incorporate in any sales presentation so that you are able to make a connection with your prospects or prospect and ultimately sell your service or your program. So ultimately, when you are setting up a story, there are several elements to that story that make it really, really good. And I always use the hero's journey, which is a framework that's been around for ages. Every time any story has been told, especially Hollywood movies, the good ones always use the hero's journey. And typically the way that this hero's journey starts is with a crisis. Something's happened. Darth Vader has invaded the world. The ship is sinking, something like that, a crisis moment. And that's always a good place to start. It doesn't have to be at the beginning sequentially or chronologically in your story. But if you start with the crisis moment, that's going to grab somebody's attention straight away. And then you can start with what led up to that crisis moment. So that's the second piece. The third piece is then you want to introduce the other characters, the ones that helped you along the way. And so those are your guides. And that guide can either be a book, it can be a person, it can be a thought, it can be internally as well. And then of course you have the villains, the ones that are keeping you from reaching your ultimate goal that you want to achieve. And that again can be an actual person, it could be a book, it could be a thought, it could be something that's going on internally in you as well. So don't think that villains just automatically have to be people. So then you have this, guides are helping you, and you're the hero, by the way. So guides are helping you, villains are trying to keep you from going. So there's a struggle after the crisis moment, you're trying to get to your goal, and then there's the climax, or when you actually achieve your goal. Part of the story where you have that realization, you've achieved your goal, you're like, wow, this is awesome. So that's just the simple story structure. You want to start with your crisis moment. You want to build up to what built up to that point where there was that crisis. Then you want to introduce the guides, the people that helped you, the villains, the ones that didn't help you. And then you want to go through the struggles that you went through to get to where you are. And then boom, you're at that climax point. And then what did you learn from it? And when you're going through a simple story structure like that, you're going to engage with your audience, and they're going to ultimately take that next step with you. And especially if it's a sales presentation and you're sharing a personal story with them, then they're going to be like really into what you're having to say, as long as it is relevant to their situation as well. Now, the other mistake that most people make when telling their story is that it's not relevant to what the topic is at hand. So you always want to use the story to bring together the idea that you just shared. The second mistake that people kind of make on telling stories is where to place that story or when to tell the story that's appropriate for the conversation, the sales conversation. And the kind of the rule of thumb is you want to use a story to reinforce a topic idea. So let's take an example of personal training. When I was doing my public speaking for personal training, I would always share my personal story of when I walked into the doctor's office and he told me I was 30 pounds overweight, I had high blood pressure and high cholesterol, and wanted me to go on all this medication at 30 years old. And I asked the doc, I was like, well, is there a different choice, or do I have to take the medicine? He's like, well, you could try this thing called diet and exercise, but nobody does that, just take the pills. Ultimately, I decided to do the hard work of nutrition and exercise, and I bought this book. It was called Body for Life. That was the hero, or the guide in my story. I bought this book, but along the way, I had people in my life that were sabotaging me, the villains. But ultimately, I lost 40 pounds of fat, gained 10 pounds of muscle in just 12 weeks. And when I went back to see my doctor, number one, he didn't recognize who I was. And number two, he was like, what did you do? I was like, well, I didn't take your advice and I did diet and exercise and it worked, and you are fired as my doctor. What I learned from that is that when you have a goal, when you have a crisis moment like having a health issue, you are going to achieve those goals. And that's why I think it's important for you to sign up for my personal training program. So as an example, that would be a story that I would share with prospects, and they'd be like, oh, wow, you've been there, you understand who I am. And now when they go to sign up, it's a very easy sell. So there you go. I hope this video has helped you learn how to, one, create a story, and then two, how to wrap that into a conversation that will ultimately help you sell more of your programs and services. If you like this, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and I've actually put another video right here that I think you're going to absolutely enjoy. So go ahead and watch that, and until next time, you have a great day.